Good morning, America. Good afternoon, Europe. Thank you for joining us for this webinar where we're going to be discussing the changing view of the marketing funnel and what it means for brands, for you guys. We will be recording this webinar. We will be sending you the PowerPoint version. And please, guys, if you have any question, please write them down. We're going to have 2-3 minutes at the end of this session for question for Leo. As the world gradually reopened, e-commerce really emerged as the only bright spot. So we thought it was really important in the current environment to spend more time with one of our specialists for performance advertising. So I'm going to be hosting you guys for this webinar with Léo. Léo is a global VP for performance advertising. Léo, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rachid. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope this webinar will be insightful. And as Rachid said, don't hesitate to participate and to ask questions at the end if anything is unclear.
We'll definitely try to make this webinar as insightful as possible and engaging as well. So we will be asking you guys questions as well. And we actually, I think I'm going to start with a question that I hear a lot from clients from the industry about the different kind of structures that different brands are using to manage performance and branding activation. We hear these questions from the pure player, from brands that are a bit less familiar with performance advertising as well. So I'm asking you this question to the audience, and you're going to have the opportunity to answer the question. Are you guys currently manage both branding and activation, or is it managed by a different team collaborating or two team of experts? You should have a little pop-up that should come up on your screen. We ran this question this morning in the first version of this webinar. We had a really interesting feedback from the audience. It's really interesting to find out what's the view from the market. So I'm going to repeat the question one last time, and you're going to have like 10 more seconds to answer the poll. Are your branding and activation budget currently managed by the same team or a different team? Antonella, our marketing expert. Oh, by the same team. Really interesting. What do you think, Leo, comparing to this morning?
So it's again a different result than what we expected, like this morning. What I think is very interesting here is that what we see at Teads globally through performance and branding teams that we speak.
Oh, and we lost Leo a little bit.
True is that it's most of the time to silo teams. What we see is that there is also a case where more and more teams are going in this scenario where they have different teams, but they are still collaborating. So they are learning from the performance, basically insights of the branding campaigns. And the pure players, the most advanced buyers, which looks like is our audience, are handling everything as one team. So we have an audience of experts, and we will be able to go in a more detailed way into this presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Leo. And really sorry for the little change with the connection. We lost you for just a few seconds. Another question we have a lot from our clients is about what's the kind of optimum splits between branding campaign and performance campaign. Well, there's one research that is probably the most authoritative and comprehensive on this specific topic from Field and Binet, and they identify the kind of optimum split being 60-40, 60% branding, 40% performance. That's the optimum split of a media budgets for the best business impact, basically. So if you're not familiar with this research, I really encourage you to have a look at it. And actually, another question for the audience right now. For your business, what percentage of your media are you currently investing in activation? Minus 10%, above or between 10 and 50, between 50 and 75%, or above 75%. So I'm going to reply just here. And we're going to see what's the kind of feedback. Obviously, the question is regarding the current environment where a lot of boutiques and shop are gradually reopening with social distancing in place. Footfalls are lower than before. So a lot of brands are definitely moving the dial further into the activation parts. Antonella, oh, yep, all right. Really interesting feedback here. So the majority, 50% of you guys are investing between 10 and 50% of their media budget towards performance advertising. Leo, any specific view here on the results comparing to this morning? It's quite similar.
Yeah, I think again, it's quite similar. This morning we had the same numbers, but we are also some clients at over 75%. So we want to show you a scenario a bit after. So depending on your brands, you can have different splits. So splits that we advise is of course the ones that Rashid showed you before, and we have more interesting numbers around this.
That's right. From this research I share with you guys, obviously, if you're not every brands are equal. If you're a premium brand, this research is showing that the split should be 64%, 36%. Again, with the current context, you want to increase probably more the splits towards activation. Really interesting slide here from Leo. I'll let you take over from now, Leo. Do you want to tell us more about this slide?
Yeah, definitely. So I think this slide is telling us something very important for what is happening currently with the current crisis and the upcoming potential recession that will emerge globally. What this slide shows us is that Post, which was the largest brand in the last recession, in the last economic crisis, stopped most of their marketing investments. So if you continue in the slide, Rashid, if you want to compare to their main competitors, you all, and we all know Kellogg's, but we all forgot about Post. What Kellogg's did during this crisis is that they took an advantage of the drop in advertising and in marketing in the marketplace to intensively basically invest further into marketing to be top of mind and to take over some main competitor. So what we want to tell you here is that a crisis is complex. You have pressures to bring results, but what you should also see here is that you can keep advertising or at least find strategic opportunities to emerge stronger when the whole recession is over. So if we go a bit further and we continue into the next slide, we know, well, we see that the audience is slightly different than this slide. Let's say you are all on the bridge. Most of the clients that we have, they are more splitted. And what we want to show you here is that in a period of crisis or of recession, brands are basically reducing the top of the funnel budget to focus on what matters for economical reasons, to answer to their CFO and the need to drive business as soon as possible. But for example, GoPro has been extremely vocal about what happens if you shift 90% of your branding budget into only activation, performance. If you do that, at the end of the day, they saw their campaigns performing less and less and their conversion rate going down. So the point here is that you can basically do it for a very short amount of time, but in the long run, you still need to feed the funnel and to continue to do mid-funnel campaigns to push those people that start to learn about your brand to consider a purchase with qualified traffic, for example, bridging the gap to put them after in a performance stage. And this is really important in this moment to get the best performances out of the crisis.
Leo, you've mentioned qualified traffic to bridge the gap. Can you tell us more about qualified traffic?
Yeah, of course. So quality traffic is kind of the buzzword in the industry. You know, sending traffic is easy, but what matters for you as a brand is not just traffic, it's qualified traffic. And if we drill down into it, qualified traffic is more related to high time spent, low bounce rate, and incrementality. So I think the two first challenges that you face as a brand are around quality and incrementality, right? Everybody invests into the duopoly, even more into the walled gardens if we want to extend into the new platforms. It's most of the media investments. We don't want to ask you to stop, but we want to ask you to consider expanding your investments to where it matters and where it can bring value, where it can move the needle. Only 32% of the time spent online is done on those walled gardens. So logically, you're missing a bingo opportunity, basically 7 out of 10 times of the user's browsing journey in a day by focusing only on those channels. So the first thing that you could do is to go onto the open internet. But here you're taking a lot of risk and it might not be the best solution for you as a brand. So what we want to advise you to do and to look for with your marketing partners, as we do at Teads, is to look for the curated internet and even more, find platforms with guaranteed outcome. So if we continue into that, let me tell you something important as well between each channels. If you start to activate more and more channels and follow our advice, you need to consider the intent of users in each channel and each medium that you're gonna turn on. So let's say that you want to focus on search engines. On search engines, you have an intent to search, so an intent to buy. You're looking for something. On social networks, you're basically trying to be entertained. You're killing time on your mobile. And on premium publishers, you're currently in a browsing and reading experience, so you have an intent to discover. So always remember that even if you have a creative or specific messaging that works on what channel, you should adapt it to the mediums that you use.
Leo, thank you. I think we get a better understanding of the challenges linked to quality visit. How would you measure this kind of quality visits? Which KPI should brands should be paying attention when considering quality visits?
So in quality visits, I think there is multiple KPIs. It's a big galaxy of KPIs, but there is 3 key ones. So qualified visits or quality traffic is a mid-funnel. It's bridging the gap between the two worlds of branding and performance. And here, what matters is time spent, the number of page views realized by the user after a click, and the bounce rate. But you can go a bit further. Basically, on the other hand, on the performance business, you're looking at lead sales and pure conversion as tangible ROI. What I want to introduce here as a concept and a new metric for qualified visits is basically the new user ratio, because new users are basically new potential prospects that you can remarket after to drive sales. So consider looking at the first metrics, but also consider the incrementality and the value that it can bring in assisted conversions.
Thank you, Leo. I have to admit, I'm still always a bit confused with the definition of bounce rate. Would you mind sharing with us like the definition of bounce rate and explaining us also the challenges with time spent?
Yeah, so the bounce rate and time spent, I think, are the most metrics which are the most commonly used, but basically not very well known. So bounce rate is always the first KPI that the clients look at or for you to look at when you do a campaign. But sometimes a high bounce rate can be perceived as something negative. It's not actually negative in all scenarios. Let me give you an example. I'm online, I click on a Teads ad, I go to look into a luxury watch on a specific website, so I'm considering to buy, and I spend a few minutes, and after I leave the page, I will be considered as a bounce, but I still spend 5 minutes reading about it and considering and looking at the product. So I'm still a qualified traffic, someone that you appreciate and that you want to rework as a brand, but in terms of bounce rates, it's really negative. The same scenario could happen if you have a single page application, you know, those very long pages with a lot of content. If the user just stays on this page and scroll down, it could stay a very long time and you could be considered as a bounce. In terms of time spent, so time spent is also something that is not fully well known, even if it can be used to ponderate the bounce. Time spent, depending on the platform, can be measured in different ways. For example, on Google Analytics, it's the time between when the user lands and when the user leaves, not counting the last page. You can see that here you have a gap of precision and measurement. But at Teads, we have decided, and we can report for your campaigns, on every second spent on the page of the buyer.
Um, okay, so thank you, Thais, for the quick overview of the funnel, the importance of the quality visits, how to measure it. Could you maybe share with the audience some best practices to help them to drive quality, to generate quality visits to their site?
Yeah, definitely. So I did, and I selected with you before that 7 big categories. And I think the first one we should cover is around targeting. You know, targeting is a good and a complex thing to handle into your campaigns. So you always want to target the right user, but you have a challenge that third-party data is very expensive, retrained scale, and might not be the best solution to get the results. So what I want to make you consider here is to use the first-party data of your media partner. For us, for example, it could be the user's interest, because we can see what people read, and also to consider using their own technology of lookalike, if they have any, to be able to find the same users as you have on your website, but which are not yet your users. The second concept I wanted to cover is around creative. So we spoke about targeting, and creative can also assist in some way the targeting of your campaign. Performance and all media buying online is all around AI, and it's all around data. So using the good creative, so the good combination of image, title, and CTA can allow you to deliver, basically to help the machine find clickers that correspond to your audience. It's not 100% perfect, but you're helping the machine by tailoring your message to find specific audiences on top of the first-party data that you apply. So always consider having multiple wordings and multiple messagings depending on the target audience. But thanks to creative, we notice something also as a third point, which is happening a lot. It's around having variations, you know, A/B testing. I told you that all media buying is based on machine learning, AI, and data. What you need to do to find the best combination is to have multiple creative variations. At Teads, of you as a brand or your creative agency, you can have an idea of what will resonate to your audience. But actually, before testing it in the real life and seeing people interacting with the combination, you can't really know. So what you need to do is, of course, to give more chances of success by doing as many variations as possible to get the best CTR, the best qualified traffic, and the best return on ad spend at the end on your media investments.
We're still seeing the majority of our clients, at least at Teads, approving only 2 creative on average. So it's clearly a best practice that I recommend to everyone here on the call if they're not already doing it.
Thank you, Rashid. Yeah, I think it's also something that we should all consider as a strategic way to get a competitive advantage versus the other media that is currently running in parallel of you. So a good way to step up and compete. But furthermore than A/B testing, we want to speak about something that is a bit less funny. It's about the pixel. So you know the pixel is never a fun discussion to have, but it's always a good one. So any media partners can optimize only for what they can measure. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we are bothering you for nothing with a pixel or capture and resell your data. It's some stuff that we don't, and nobody does now in the marketplace. But if you don't have a pixel, your media partner can only optimize for what you can see. So for example, CTR, having high CTRs, very cheap clicks, and potentially, if they do like us, they can prevent the misclicks. But for you as a brand, you don't want a high CTR and a cheap click. You want people going to your sites. So you want landing rate optimization. And you don't really want only people going to your site, you want people staying and engaging with your content and being qualified. So you want qualified traffic optimization. And as I said, incrementality is also optimum. It's also a nice to have a cherry on the cake. This is something that you can get with a pixel. So we know, and we did an analysis with Rashid on the uplift that you can get through a pixel.
You're stealing my thunder. I was about to bring it to the table. What we saw between brands using performance strategy with us, with Pixel and without Pixel, the brands using our approach with Pixel can see an increase in time spent on their site by 128%. So that's quite a really punchy stats here. It makes a huge difference. And now there's tools to make your life easier, like tag management tools that simplify the integration of pixels. So another really best practice that I can only highly recommend.
Great. Thank you, Rashid. Sorry for stealing your sentence. To continue in the best practices, we don't have much more, but I think the coming ones are really important. I want to speak about the landing pages. You remember we discussed about each potential channel you could do media on and you could promote your brand or your product on. And on each of them, you should have a different approach in creative, as we discussed, but also a different approach in terms of landing page. Why? Because if you have an intent to buy, for example, on search, you can directly push a form the user are willing to convert. They are looking for this. They are looking to buy your product. On social, you need to capture attention. So in terms of creative, you need to use video, for example, and to have very snackable content, something punchy that can be bought or converted on the spot. And on premium publisher, because you're in a reading experience and discovering, if the user is willing to stop his reading his content, you should offer also some storytelling and promote content on your landing page versus directly your product. And if we continue after on the 6th point, I think time is a luxury and we are all basically on our mobile, on our tablet, even more now. So speed matters. We see at Teads that if your website loads in more than 5 seconds, you can lose up to 60% of the users that click on the ad. If you load in 20 seconds, which I wouldn't wait on my mobile 20 seconds to get the page of the ad I interacted with, you have less than 10% of the users. And to give you a referential point, Amazon can lose up to $1.6 billion of sales yearly if their website loading time is delayed by 1 second. So really, speed is really a must if you want to get the best efficiency of your media investments. Also optimize your landing page on top of the content, optimize it to go fast on desktop and on mobile. And lastly, I think to conclude those best practices, I think the last element that matters are still related to AI and data, right? Campaign duration and daily spend are things that your media partners or Teads can ask you to follow as directive or guidelines to get the best results. It's not to incentivize you to invest more, it's just to be basically in the best scenario of success. If you don't have a minimum campaign duration, you might not get the good level of data and let the machine optimize and learn from the delivery to get tangible results. Same for the daily spend. If you start with a very low budget, we won't be able to get enough events daily and to try any combination to get tangible information and directional data to continue to optimize your campaign. So those two are best practices. For example, in terms of campaign duration, at Teads, we always ask for 2 weeks to get the best and most efficient results. And in terms of daily spend, your Teads representative can adapt to each market because it all depends on the price of the marketplace. But you can start, for example, with 3 times your CPA. Site list, I know that site lists can be always a challenge. As a brand, you know what your typical client or your typical audience, for example, magazines, they are reading. But what we want to ask you to consider is that, let's say that I'm your target audience. I'm not gonna read only those specific news titles. I'm also in the rest of the day clicking and going onto more websites. So always consider to expand your list of publishers, blacklist the ones that you don't like, but don't limit it to a very narrow list. Why? Because the audience is too targeted. We can't take advantage of our first-party data and we can't get the best efficiency due to the limited scale. So those are the 3 last points for the 7 best practices. And we will continue a bit after with Rashid on the next element.
Yeah, Leo, thank you again for sharing your experience and expertise with us. I always recommend my clients to challenge us and challenge their media vendors in general. What would be the question they should ask a media vendor regarding performance advertising?
Yes, so that's a good point, and you can even ask them to us if you want to. So the things that you should ask to your media partners are, for example, related to the supply. So is your supply exclusive? Do you have exclusive placement and direct connection with publishers? Those are the two first questions. Why is it important? Is that having direct integration with publishers can allow you to get first-party data from the publisher users. The first point related to exclusivity of supply is for you not to compete against yourself if you work through another partner that is buying the same supply that you buy directly from another channel. The third point related to the technology, it's always better to work with full stack platforms. Why? Because it's different technologies. We work on standards, but it can create inefficiencies because it's different platforms that speak together. So it's never 100% of compatibility between the two. The second points are also related to data. If you want to use data on your campaigns or use data for measurement, always try to understand how is your data measured, where is it coming from, how do they attribute the accuracy of the results. For example, on post view, was the ad viewable? And lastly, for the fraud, something that is always good to know as well is, are they going further? Publishers and platforms basically can know even more than what the third-party partners can do to ensure a 99.99% fraud-free rate. And lastly, I saw that we had a question about cookieless. Cookie is important, but it's also disappearing. So try to understand how they work and what they are trying to do in their best possible solution to ensure the best use of your media investment.
Leo, again, thank you so much for this discussion. Can you maybe now share a little bit more with our audience about your journey or the Teads journey on the marketing funnel?
Yeah, definitely. So the Teads journey towards moving into traffic acquisition and performance started 2 years ago. So, but before going into what we did, let me tell you why we did it. So as a media partner, as a media vendor, you might wonder, what should you buy from us to drive traffic or to do performance? Well, that's a good question. We are very well known for branding and consideration campaign. But we started branding campaigns by guaranteeing the outcome of branding delivery for video. What do I mean by that? Is that what matters for video investments are that your ad needs to be viewed in full and still be in view at the end. So cost per viewable completed view. So we launched the first solution, which was in read, where we guaranteed the outcome, billing the client on cost per CPVV while buying on the page load. It's basically performance for advertising. Then in 2016, we launched what we called viewable display. It's basically a high impact advertising that is still sits in the middle of the page in the same slot, but more for consideration. What do I mean by consideration? I mean users looking at your ads for a specific amount of time or interacting with it. What matters for you here is for a partner to guarantee the time in view. So we decided to do performance for consideration, guaranteeing any time, any seconds in view while buying on the page load of the publisher. Performance for consideration. But those new ad units were actually extremely efficient to acquire traffic. So we decided to go even further and to build everything from scratch to finish basically the full funnel of our partners. So let me tell you the first 3 big problems that we wanted to tackle. So the first big problem that we noticed in the market when you buy traffic on display are first the drop-off between the clicks and the landing. We see that in average, you can have 50% of drop-off between clicks to landings, coming from a slow landing page, coming from a bad connection. You could be on 4G, for example, on your mobile, but your connection is not really 4G. It's quite slow. You're gonna click on the link, you're gonna be disappointed due to the landing time, and you're gonna close the page. This is a big wastage of media investments. The second one is related for the clicks duplication. This is something not very well known in the industry, but 10% of all the clicks of your campaigns are basically from the same users. So can you imagine if you start to scale to big amounts, it starts to be another waste of investment. What you want as a brand is not clicks, but new clicks and potential prospects. And the last one is more due to how the web works. Basically, you have a lot of big players, so you have market fragmentation. Market fragmentation means that you can work with 5 or 6 partners, for example, and they have partially the same users, because I'm going to potentially go on social, go on search, and after read content online. Here, it's an overlap of traffic, and you don't want to pay for clicks from the same people on 5 different channels. And this loss could be between 30 to 50%, depending on the size of the investments. So we had a very simple idea at the beginning, 2 years ago, to launch what we call Teads True Visit. Teads True Visit is simple. It's basically fixing all of those market imperfections by not charging our partners on the click, but on someone landing on the page, by not charging for every click, but a unique click, a unique landing even, and for not basically charging for overlap of traffic between multiple sources. So all of that was our first core product, our first initial offering 2 years ago, which has since then evolved. Now we can guarantee cost per visit, charge on the CPC and also a CPM while still optimizing for what matters, qualified traffic. And we do all of this through new formats, Teads for very engaging and unique, fully custom, fully white glove. But for traffic, it's a different world. So we had to learn a lot from what could work on our slot, because the slot is the same as the ones that we use in branding, in the middle of the content of the page of our premium publishers. And we had to do a lot of testing to be sure that we could drive the best efficiency and the best results. So these new formats on the left is called the single image, and in the middle, the carousel, basically are viewable by design format still, but they are being tested and built to drive results. So we don't want to offer much flexibility to ensure good KPIs afterwards. And our newcomer since a week is the one on the right, what we call social display. Social display, to make it simple, is a one-click social importer where basically you can provide us the best performing ads that you use on social, let's say Facebook or Instagram. And you can extend the delivery in the same basically brand safe premium slot in the middle of the page of premium publishers, using the best performing assets and all the learnings that you had before. So very simple social extension in a click with guaranteed outcome. So our first step into the offering is really to bridge the gap. We are working into going into pure performance, but internally, our key expertise is to bring qualified traffic. So we do that in a very unique way through using the same viewable inventory, offering premium and quality network of publishers and position. And we can still do something which is, I think, very important. We can still guarantee the same thing as we guarantee you in branding in terms of brand safety, fraud-free guarantee, and guaranteed outcomes with our own technology that we build for you for those campaigns.
Leo, I can't thank you enough for this discussion. Before taking a couple of minutes for question, I just want to recap and have the key takeaway here for the audience. Remember, follow the 64-36 branding activation recommendation. Focus on the right KPI for quality traffic. Choose an efficient targeting strategy. You can pre-qualify your traffic through the creative. Don't hesitate to run some A/B testing to drive better results. Integrating the pixel will also help big time for better results. Choosing the landing page in function of the user mindset makes a difference as well. Speed is a new luxury experience. It is a competitive advantage for your e-commerce business. As always, don't hesitate to challenge your media vendors. And most importantly, contact your Teads representative for quality traffic, and join us for the next webinar. The next performance webinar in several weeks with Leo will be talking about tracking and attribution. We'll be diving into landing page. We started to mention it a little bit, but also creative practices. Right. And if there's any other topic you'd like us to cover, please don't hesitate to let us know. questions. So you can ask us the question on the Zoom Q&A box. We already had one early on. It was about cookieless environment. How can you measure the new users in a cookieless environment? Leo, do you want to bring some clarity on this question?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a good question. Of course, you know, cookieless environment is a challenge for every media partner. At Teads, we use multiple things. So basically, we created a machine learning algorithm using multiple elements for each of the users that we see from our publisher network. For example, if users in Europe, if they gave consent to be tracked, to see what they do on our advertiser pages. What do we use as metrics? It could be, for example, the IP address. It could be also, for example, the laptop that they use to connect it, because we see them very, very often, and be sure that we don't target twice the same user. It's not 100% perfect, but it's the best solution in class we can do, and we can't go further. And in certain scenario, we can use also some information related to the devices if we have some in-app delivery. If you want to go further, we have a very good and detailed webinar from Rémi Kakel, our global expert, basically about data. He's explaining very much precisely how we can do an operate in cookieless environment. And you have a link to the recording at the end of this presentation.
Another question for you, Leo. Can you tell us more about why incrementality is important?
Good, thank you, Rashid. So incrementality is important, in my opinion, because if you acquire traffic, you want also traffic that you can rework and bring value and bring sales. Incrementality and focusing on new users is basically building up your cookie pool of people, of users, that you can retarget after or rework to drive sales. So really, it's a proxy for assisted conversions and to increase your bottom line.
Okay, we have maybe 1 more minute if there's any other question out there. There's another one for you, Leo. Display or video, what should I be using for performance?
That's another question that comes up a lot. So display or video. Video is coming up a lot because, for example, on social platforms, you want to use video to capture users' attention. People are scrolling extremely fast on their mobile, and the only way to capture their attention is to use video. At Teads, we are working on a video solution that will be released in the next few months, but we don't believe that video is the best medium to date to capture basically qualified traffic and get true engagement. Video is more expensive on the open internet. Remember that social doesn't pay, so basically the media that they use, we have to pay the publishers. So in terms of ROI, it doesn't make sense to date to use video to do traffic acquisition.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Leo, for joining us for this great discussion on the marketing funnel. I invite you guys, as Leo mentioned, to have a look at the different other topic we've covered in previous webinar. As I've mentioned initially, we will be sending you this recording and this PowerPoint. If you don't have any more questions, I will close the webinar. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to have you in our next webinars. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Rashid.